mean, we thought it couldn't get any worse. We thought that, oh my gosh, the true con, the evangelicals, the people who want voucher programs have gotten the reins in our cherished, beloved public school system in this country. Well, it's actually gotten worse this time around. And I think this shows how brazen Donald Trump is going to be with who he selects. Obviously, we've seen Matt Gaetz and our jaw fell on the floor. We've seen Mike Huckabee, our jaws fall on the floor. RFK, Dr. Mehmet Oz, our jaws fall on the floor. This one takes the cake, guys. And I'm going to make the argument to you that this is the most pernicious and the most revealing selection of the Donald Trump 2024 administration, or really the 2025 administration. Let's start here. Okay. Trump taps Linda McMahon for education secretary. She has little education experience, but is a key player in the president-elect's orbit. By key player, Gavin, do you know what they mean?
I mean, what do you think they mean?
That she's donated a shit ton of money to Donald Trump over the years. 100%. So we'll read right here. President-elect Donald Trump will nominate his transition co-chair, Linda McMahon, for education secretary, according to two people familiar with the transition discussions. McMahon, 76, gained prominence as a powerful force in the making World Wrestling Entertainment a multi-billion-dollar enterprise before she led the Small Business Administration during Trump's first term. She remained an important player in the president-elect's orbit after he left the White House in 2021. She was appointed to the Connecticut State Board of Education, but resigned roughly a year later in 2010 when she made a failed run for the Senate. She is a graduate of blah, 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 blah. And let's go ahead and dig up some of her real experience, Gavin. Let's take a look at one of the minor flaws in making her the Secretary of Education. This is the shallow end of the pool.
Before we get into that, what's it say her qualifications are?
She doesn't have any. That's what we're getting into.
Yeah, in that next paragraph, though, it says for the past 4 years as the chair of the board of America First Policy Institute, Linda has been a fierce advocate for parents' rights. So she has literally no experience whatsoever as far as education goes. She's just a fierce advocate.
100%. And that leads us to our next slide, Gavin. McMahon once falsely stated she had an education degree. In January 2009, Linda McMahon successfully sought a position on the Connecticut State Board of Education after filling out a questionnaire from the governor's office on which she claimed to have received a bachelor's degree in education from East Carolina University in 1969. But the Hartford Courant reported in 2010 that McMahon's degree was actually in French.
What?
McMahon resigned from the board days before the report was made public. At the time, she claimed she thought her degree was in education because she had completed a semester of student teaching. A brazen lie.
Also, I feel like even if she did have a bachelor's degree in education, like big whoop, that's kind of a BS. I mean, it's an important thing, but like having a bachelor's in education, that wouldn't even qualify her for the job, even if it was true.
Absolutely. And now, Gavin, you have been covering politics a long time now, particularly throughout the entire Trump presidency. And one culture war talking point that has always kind of stuck for the Republican Party that they just keep going back to the well for is that they're trying to groom our kids in schools. We have to get the drag queens out of schools. We have to keep trans people out of schools. We have to keep the woke, radical, blue-haired leftists out of our school. Why? Because they're trying to groom our children. They want to sexually exploit our children, right? That's what they say. This is a real talking point that is parroted from the Republican Party constantly ad nauseum, is it not?
Oh, 100%. We've heard it, like you said, ad nauseum over the past 4 years, this linking specifically of the LGBT community with this notion of, child predators specifically in schools, and specifically with the drag queen story hour stuff, this inference that like teachers are interested in preying on your kids, specifically left-wing, progressive, non-binary teachers, stuff like that. But yeah, what's this scandal that I've heard so much about from you, Zach?
Yes. So I'm sorry to build it up so slowly, but this is insane, guys. During Linda McMahon's time as a head of operations at the WWE, she is named a defendant along with the corporation and her husband. And people will tell you, oh, they're separated now. Yeah, she's distancing herself from him because she knows he's going down. And after decades of profiting off of his abuse and her own abuse, right? She's ready to try and like sell him down the river and make sure that she can still be Secretary of Education. So I don't want to hear anybody crying about, oh, the wife is actually divorcing her husband. No, she knew what was going on the whole time. And we're going to read about it in this indictment here. I'm going to zoom in for everybody so you guys can see it. And we don't have time to get into everything given the nature of our show. I'm just going to give you guys the rough shot over the worst of what she's been involved with. So there are 5 Jane Does. Okay, so that's important to notice. This isn't one person, right? There are 5 Jane Does, and guys, they're actually men. Okay, and if I can tell you guys anything about sexual assault allegations, these men coming forward, it's a big deal. It's very hard to get 5 men on the record to talk about sexual abuse allegations, right? And this goes back to when they were boys in the 80s predominantly, as we'll read about. They're not named in the lawsuit. However, their identities are speculated about. And so let's just read this introduction really quickly here, Gavin, and then I want to get your initial thoughts. During the 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s, Melvin Phillips Jr., aka Mel Phillips, worked for the World Wrestling Entertainment as its prominent ringside announcer and ring crew chief. Using his public and highly visible positions in an industry thriving on young adults for fandom, Phillips hired underage boys, often as young as 12 or 13, to assist in the ring crew with errands and other tasks in preparation for WWE's wrestling shows. Phillips' recruits were known within the WWE as ring boys. Phillips' real motivation in luring ring boys was the promise of gaining access to the popular WWE events was to sexually abuse them, and Vince McMahon knew it, admitting that he was aware, at least as early as the 80s, that Phillips had a peculiar and unnatural interest in young boys. It's also worth noting that in a separate quote we won't get to, but it is revealed in this lawsuit, Linda McMahon hired him again after he was terminated on the account that he, quote, stopped chasing after young boys. So it's an open secret that this is what he was doing, but we're not even close to the most nefarious portion. Defendants knowingly gave Phillips free rein to use his highly public WWE personality and image to entice local kids from the area near the WWE shows to help set up and take down the wrestling ring. Phillips lured and manipulated young boys with the promises of meeting famous wrestlers and attending highly popular wrestling shows, experiences that were otherwise unattainable for these kids. Like many pedophiles, Phillips targeted young boys from broken homes and even routinely traveled with them in plain sight, staying together in hotel rooms and driving in his car to WWE events across the Northeast corridor. We'll go down. This is the fellow here. This is absolutely crazy. At some venues, defendants, that's Vince and Linda McMahon, provided Phillips with his own private dressing room where he could use his own expensive video camera, extremely rare at that time, to film his sexual escapades with the children. The action is brought by survivors of sexual abuse committed by Phillips, who groomed, exploited, and sexually abused underage ring boys. While 5 of these survivors have initially come forward, there are undoubtedly countless others who still suffer in silence. This lawsuit is the tip of the iceberg. More revelations will certainly follow in the coming months.
And she was found guilty, or
this lawsuit is from a month ago.
Okay, so this is all...
It's all ongoing.
Damn. Wow. So... I mean, is your thinking that she wants this appointment so that, or like, did she want a pardon? Like, do you think that she's trying to get in with the Trump administration so that she could get out of, facing the consequences for this?
I think what she's doing right now is she's insulating herself with the Trump administration, and she's creating distance between herself and her husband that she's now seeking a divorce from. If you read comments from her attorney this morning after she was announced that she'd be Secretary of Education, she announced that she's going through with divorcing Vince McMahon. And in a second, I'm going to show you guys the real nefarious shit that Vince McMahon is accused of. What I imagine is going to happen is she's going to use this to cuddle up to Donald Trump. They're going to shove it all on Vince McMahon, and he's going to go down Diddy, Harvey Weinstein style, because I have some absolutely insane allegations to read to you guys about Vince McMahon that's all coming out right now. And this woman never saw fit to put any distance between herself and her husband until a year ago. Crazy.
Yeah. So there is proof, you think, that she was involved with this and that she wasn't just like naive about it? I mean, obviously I'm not naive, but you have to have evidence to convict someone's partner if they're criminal. You can't just assume necessarily that person is also guilty. But do you think there is complicity here from Linda?
Oh, it's documented. Yeah, because not only when she was also the head of the WWE, she was a CEO. She was involved at the top levels, and she's also on record saying that she hired this guy on the condition that he stopped chasing after little boys.
Right. So she knew,
which reveals that she knew that he was in fact chasing after little boys and did nothing to stop it. And it was kind of like hey, you need to keep this out of our eyesight. You need to make sure that we always have
this is a liability for us. Yeah, that's crazy, because I mean, I always knew about Vince McMahon. I knew that he was a total piece of shit. I know that there's a Netflix documentary out there exposing a lot of his crimes and his debauchery. But honestly, I basically just found out that Linda McMahon even exists. I didn't even know that she was involved in the WWE, let alone that she was a candidate for Department of Education or whatever. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, she's been
Did you know about this person?
Oh yeah, she's been a long time. Like, you know, she's basically been the like counterweight to what's his fuck the entire time, right?
Vince.
Vince McMahon. And she'll go on stage. Like, there's a video of her being on stage with Donald Trump and Vince McMahon. There's so many pictures of her, like, you know, pretending to strangle Vince. She was in on all of it.
And you said they are getting divorced now, her and Vince. But you think it's just kind of a charade?
Oh yeah, dude, 100%. Let me find out the stop chasing after boys comment, because that I think is really incriminating.
That's crazy though.
Document.
It seems like literally every single person that Donald Trump is appointing has some, you know, sex crime under their belt or some relationship to sex criminals. It's genuinely insane.
100%. And again, you made the point correctly that you can't find somebody guilty of things that their husband did, right? So that's why I wanted to begin by showing you these are the things that we know Linda McMahon did, right? But I also want you guys to think about the pathology of somebody who could for decades be married to this man I'm about to read you about. All right, do you have anything to add before we hear some absolutely horrifying shit about Vince McMahon? Really a content warning. If you guys don't want to hear about brutal sexual assault, really quickly, I think it's important to discuss just how nefarious and pernicious the people in Donald Trump's immediate orbit are. But if it's not something you want to hear about, I totally understand. We'll probably wrap that portion in like 5 minutes. But yeah, let's take a look at this. So this is about a Miss Grant who was hired by Vince McMahon. So it says the plaintiff, Janelle Grant, is a former employee of WWE who was the victim of physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, and trafficking at WWE, right? We can read about how McMahon befriended Miss Grant, giving her hopes of a new life and promises of yet to be determined role at WWE, and showering her with attention and assurances, along with gifts like a VIP experience at WrestleMania. But what seemed like a dream in the spring of 2019 quickly became a nightmare as McMahon dangled career-making and life-changing promises in front of Miss Grant. He demonstrated an increasing lack of boundaries. During several meetings that were ostensibly about potential job at WWE, he greeted her in his underwear, touched her, and repeatedly asked her for hugs, and spent hours sharing intimate details about his personal life. Now, you guys might be like, well, that's bad, but it's not super bad. Well, let's continue on. She felt trapped in an impossible situation, submitting to McMahon's sexual demands or facing ruins. Miss Grant feared she had everything to lose and faced negative consequences no matter what happened. After succumbing to the pressure for a physical relationship, Miss Grant was slotted into an entry-level position as an administrative coordinator. Miss Grant remained in that role with the exception of a temporary relocation. Blah, blah, blah. We'll go forward, and then it starts to get really fucking dark, guys. Let's see here. In March 2020, McMahon began sharing sexually explicit photographs and videos of Miss Grant, including pornographic content he recorded with other men both inside and outside the company, including with members of the television production tech team and executive producers. Given McMahon's omnipotent position at WWE, coercion was inherent in his increasingly depraved sexual demands. Specifically, while McMahon was CEO of WWE and Miss Grant was employed as an entry-level coordinator in the legal department, McMahon recruited individuals to have sexual relations with Miss Grant and or with the two of them, directed Miss Grant to visit defendant Laurinaitis prior to the start of workdays for sexual encounters, and expected and directed Miss Grant to engage in sexual activity at the WWE headquarters even during work hours. It's crazy. McMahon assurances that Gantz was safe and independent rang hollow in light of his efforts to isolate her from her friends and attempt to chip away at her identity until it was replaced with his desired role for her as his bitch, his fantasy, and or his porn star. It goes on. Upon his return from the bathroom, McMahon and his friend actively resumed the threesome. Oh, this is crazy. He defecated on Miss Grant during a threesome. There's talk of him like raping her. And saying no means yes. Let me look that up because it's crazy. Yeah. In June 2021, McMahon and defendant Laurinaitis sexually assaulted Miss Grant inside Laurinaitis' office in WWE headquarters while colleagues were busy at their desk. Behind a locked door, the two men cornered her and pulled her in between them, forcibly touched her before ultimately putting her on top of a table between them. She begged them to stop, but they forced themselves on her, each taking turns restraining her for the other while saying no means yes and take it, bitch. So pretty insane stuff to be accused of and not leave your husband then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. And just so people are clear on the timeline, they have been separated for a while, but they're now just getting divorced.
Yeah, it was just announced this morning that she intends to go forward with the divorce.
Just this morning in wake of her, appointment announcement. That's crazy.
See, you'll
Because
see.
someone in chat was saying like, oh, they've been separated for a while, but you think she would have divorced him if they've been.
This is from 5 hours ago, so they're confirming the separation, but they're still legally married.
Yeah,
we can share that.
I mean, obviously, I think she's. I'm sure she's complicit in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
that's insane. I mean, yeah, like I said, I knew about some of the Vince McMahon shit, but I'm just finding out about Linda, so that's pretty crazy.
This is the first time either McMahon has publicly confirmed their marriage and separation.
Gotcha.
So that's from this morning, guys. So I told you this is what this is about. This is about her protecting herself.
Has she commented on his scandal before today? Because the scandal on Vince McMahon's part has been known for a while. I remember that broke like maybe a year or two ago. We even had Jesse Ventura on to comment about it.
Yes, and if everybody should definitely check out our interview with the governor of Ventura, where he absolutely lampoons Vince McMahon. But I'm looking to see. Everything is dominated by recent headlines.
Yeah. Not that it's really all that important, but Libra Vision Network says no, she has not defended or commented. So, yeah. That's wild, though. I mean, that's crazy. I appreciate the insight though on this pick, because to me it totally came as a surprise. I was like, I kind of figured Betsy DeVos might get the gig again, but then I'm like, what? Now this lady who's Vince McMahon's wife is getting the job? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, and it's important to note that Vince McMahon and Donald Trump had a really good relationship for a long time, and this is the kind of sadistic, moralist bastard. I mean, disgusting shit, guys. I mean, it's hard to read. The whole indictment is filled with shit like that, and you feel so horrible for this poor woman, and there have to be dozens of women like her. So it's
not to mention all those poor young men that were abused by these monsters at the WWE. Much and almost it sounds a lot like the Catholic priest situation, honestly, with the altar boys. These are ring boys, same shit. And shout out to you, Marcus, for the generous $20 super chat. Do you guys think that Trump is appointing all these people who are involved in sex crime to essentially disarm the accusation altogether, similar to the way that despite any evidence, calling someone a Nazi does nothing? Yeah, 100%, Marcus. In fact, I think a big part of the MAGA movement is like a bigger part of it than we even realize is a backlash to MeToo, is a backlash to women's rights and feminism in the modern era. People like Donald Trump come from an era where they could get away with a lot of shit, that they could abuse whoever they wanted, that they could take advantage of young women or young men that worked underneath them, boys, girls, whatever. This was the culture for a long time. And a lot of people of this era, the Vince McMahons, the Donald Trumps, the Dana Whites, yes, part of Make America Great Again means allow me to get away with sexual crimes again and no one care about it again. Yeah. That's a huge part of this, And a lot of the even MAGA supporters that have no power, they also have internalized this war, this like battle of the sexes. And they're like, yeah, men back on top, Me Too, over.
I mean, yeah, what better culmination of that or bigger culmination of that than the your body, my choice phenomenon? Imagine telling that to little boys, and what are they going to internalize? What are they going to think about that? Are they going to respect women's sovereignty? And think about if that's your daughter, right? You might want to go kill that son of a bitch, but we need to stop it as a systemic problem, because we're teaching boys that women are their property, that they're an object for consumption, okay? That they're not a human being with a range of thoughts, feelings, emotions, something that you can build someone you can build a life with, right? Something. See, I'm even following. You know what I'm saying, guys? Men are broken up. No, we have to do a better job of counter messaging this, because it's horrifying, right? But we're actually losing the messaging more, and that's even scarier.
Women are awesome. There's my counter message.
There you go.
Women rock.
Wow. Excluding non-binary feminine presenting.
Yeah, wow. Anyway, yeah, I do. We're about to move on, guys. But yes, I do think that the backlash to Me Too from a bunch of, disgusting, oafish men that want to be able to get away with sexual crimes with impunity. Yeah, it's a big part of the MAGA movement. It has more to do with this resurgence of right-wing ideology than anyone wants to admit. Look at the popularity of a guy like Andrew Tate. For real. This is in large part what it's about to many people. And I think that Donald Trump is absolutely intentionally signaling that he feels that way by appointing almost nothing but sex criminals to his administration, seemingly so far.